Okay, folks, welcome to episode 3. In this episode, I'm going to replace the bass track. But before I do that, a couple of things I need to mention. First of all, if you're really paying attention, you've probably already noticed that things have changed a little bit in terms of the way this project looks. That is purely cosmetic. I am having some issues exporting videos from the Studio Mac, which is where I made episodes 1 and 2. So I've switched to my computer at home, and my computer at home is running a more up-to-date version of GarageBand. The differences, as I say, are purely cosmetic. The main difference is that we've got a different interface around the edge, and also the imported audio is now blue, whereas it used to be orange. But like I said, completely cosmetic. That's not going to cause you any issues. All of the windows that open, all of the keys that I use and all that kind of thing are exactly the same. It's just the way the interface looks. The other thing I was going to say is that although this video is about the bass track, I realised on the drum video I've missed out 2 really good opportunities to do some really simple but really effective editing that will help you gain extra credit. So I'm going to do those now. The first is on the track that in the original video we called 2 notes. Okay, they're the just the 2 notes which happen on their own when the subtle ticking stops, this bit here. Okay, that bit there. There's actually a cymbal crash straight after those 2 notes, and we should have put it in, really, because it's a great opportunity. So I've changed the track name. I've called it Fill rather than 2 notes, which is probably a better name for it anyway. And I'm just going to pencil in that cymbal crash. So I'm going to click on E to open the editor. There are our 2 notes, and I've already found the cymbal crash that I want, but I'm on the wrong transpose function. Okay, so I'm on 1 green light down, and I'm going to use this C# here, and you can see on the GarageBand interface that is making that's the dot coming up there. So there's the note that we want. So we trace that back, and it is literally straight after the 2 notes that we've already put in. So I'm going to go pencil tool, put that in. And that just gives us a bit more. Okay, it matches the original better, and it's, for the sake of 1 note, it's a huge improvement. The other thing is that we said that the subtle ticking kept going for a long time, but there are some other things that are going on in the real drum track. There's a sort of whooshing sound here. Okay, I'd quite like to keep that, and there's another cymbal crash. Sorry, not a cymbal crash, there's a cymbal scrape, which is going to be quite difficult for us to recreate effectively in GarageBand. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this original track to just leave in the whoosh and the cymbal scrape. Where does the cymbal scrape actually start? Oh, it starts quite a long way back. Yeah, it starts at the middle of bar 35, so that's where I'm going to edit. So the first one's dead easy. I'm just going to grab the bottom left corner of this track, and I'm going to drag it in until it's just in front of the whooshing sound. What I don't want is to duplicate the ticking sound as much as possible. We're going to get some duplication because the ticking sound is on both tracks, but we want to minimize it as much as possible. Where's that gone? Things are jumping around. So I'm zooming in so I can get it as close as possible. There we go. What does that sound like? That works nicely. Okay, now here we've got double ticking. We don't want that. But I do want that cymbal scrape. So in the middle of bar 35, between 35 and 36, I'm going to trim it with Windows T. And then by dragging the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to drag that back to the end of the whoosh. How does that sound? Let's have a listen. Let's turn off the tick temporarily. Good. And then we've got a pretty seamless cut from our version back into the original version at bar 37, which is what we want. What do we want at this point? Well, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we want a screenshot. So let's do that now. Okay, similar kind of process. I've already got my presentation ready. So duplicate screenshot 9, call it screenshot 10. Keep everything nice and neat and tiny. Put the screenshot itself in. And then say, I realized that I hadn't quite got the best out of my drum track. So I added 2 small details. One was a cymbal crash just after the 2-note drum fill, which I added with the pencil tool. The other was that there are some sound effects on the original drum track that it would be good to keep because they would be hard to make on the sequencer. As a result, I did some editing where I cut out parts of the original track. Can't spell original apparently. Really can't spell original apparently. Parts of the original track and left others in. To do this, I used a combination of the trim tool, which is Windows T or Command T, and the drag edit tool. The original drums start again at bar 37, and I am happy with the transition and the drum tracks as a whole. Okay, so that really should have been on the end of the previous video, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and we're going to start talking about the bass track. So bass track, I've got mine right up at the top of my project here. Take the solo off all of that. There we go. It doesn't start till bar 9. Here it is. It is only one pattern all the way through. Very straightforward, apart from one tiny little bit of detail, and that's the slide. Can you hear that it slides between notes 3 and 4, or sorry, notes 2 and 3? Slide. Okay, now we're actually going to put that in. It's a nice little bit of detail, which is it's quite complicated to play, but it's very straightforward to do in the sequencer. So sorry, when I say it's quite difficult to play, it's difficult to play on a keyboard. It's really easy to play on a bass guitar, but that's not what we're using to input. So we're going to do this as 2 layers, because there are actually 2 bass parts there. We've got a slightly higher one and the low one. Let's start with the low one because it's really, really straightforward. So add new track, software instrument. Where's it going to put it? Probably somewhere random because it usually does. Yep, look at that, way down there for some reason. So drag it back up, and as usual, it has defaulted to electric piano. So let's change that. Liverpool bass, I quite like this one. Haven't put it on solo, that's why it's not making any sound. Sort of my go-to bass. So here's the pattern that we're going to use. Okay, it's the same pattern over and over again. It starts on an F sharp, then goes E, A, D, D, E, and then we start the pattern again back on the F sharp. Okay, now there are a couple of places where it doesn't play the full pattern. There's a couple of stops. We're going to take them out later. You can do it if you know the song really well, or if you can see on the screen where the gaps are about to happen. You can just leave them out. I'm actually going to play the entire pattern every time so that you can see what I do, and then I'm going to take the notes out later. So I'm going to start at bar 9. I'm just going to use the keyboard for this, and it goes up to about 29, which happens to be where our drum pattern finished. So this is a good place for us to stop. So let's record that now. There we go. Okay, nice and simple to record that pattern. So let's jump into the editor. Okay, and you can see on here where those gaps are. So let's just make the editor a little bit bigger, and let's zoom in a little bit. Oh, I wish I had vertical zoom. Okay, so we don't want these two notes at the end of this bar. They're not there. There we go, should have silence there. And that happens a little bit later as well, I think. Yes, it does, in bar 20. Okay, so again, we take out those last two notes in bar 20. What do we do while we're here, of course? We quantize it, make sure everything's beautifully in time. Okay, and then of course, what do? We take a screenshot. Yes, we do. We take a screenshot. Let's zoom out of this as well. A little bit further. There we go, screenshot. This will be screenshot 11. Here I've started to replace the bass part. This is a really simple pattern which I played on the MIDI keyboard. Actually, there's a step before that. I'm going to do this as two layers, as there are either two parts or chords being played in the bass part. Both patterns are really simple, and I am going to, would have been easier if I just typed it again really, and I'm going to play them on the MIDI keyboard. Screenshot 11 shows the first layer, there are some gaps in this, but I recorded the same pattern every time. And then use the editor to take out the notes that were supposed to be missing. Okay. Mention everything as well. I also quantized this track like everything else. Lovely jubbly. There we go. Okay, so second layer is a little bit more complicated. Okay, we're going to use a tool that we haven't used before, and that's automation. So I'm going to create a new track and use the duplicate track setting so that I've already got my my bass sound ready to go. So I'm going to call this one bass top layer. Sorry, no, I'm not. I'm going to call it bass bottom layer. That's the one we just recorded. I'm going to call this one bass top layer. Okay, now it starts in the same place, but it's different notes, right? This time, we have A, G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, F sharp, G sharp, okay? Now, that is actually the notes that we're going to use for the synth riffs and also for the guitar pattern a little bit later. It's used a lot in this song in lots of different layers, so it's a really good one to get in our head. But if you listen again to the original, forget the pitch shift for a second, but you can hear it's quite a lot higher. Okay, quite a lot higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the transpose to 1 green up. And now we're in the sort of right range that we need. Fantastic. And the pitch shift. Right, okay, so on your MIDI keyboard, you have a pitch bend tool, which is this thing over here. People are often mucking around with them on the keyboards, which is a good thing, experimenting. And if you hold a note and then hit the pitch bend up, you can hear that the pitch bend goes up. Now, what we're actually going to do is, between the second and third note, we're going to nudge it up, but we need to let go of it before we play the third note, which takes a bit of practice, so it's this. Okay, now that sounds terrible. It sounds nothing like it. But what it's going to do is it's going to activate the pitch bend feature on the computer, and that way we can edit it later. So it doesn't matter if it sounds pretty dreadful at this point. It just needs to be actually activated. So let's do that now. I'm only going to record one pattern, because for this one, I'm going to use the loop tool so that we get the same bend every time, because that's what we want. Okay, so here we go with using the pitch bend on that upper layer. Okay, so sounds pretty dreadful. Let's just listen to that on its own. Okay, that is not what we want. That's bad timing on my part. That's not what we want at all. But we can edit it and we can make it work. So I'm going to zoom into the editor, so I've got a bit more space to be working. And I'm going to turn on the automation feature, which is just over here. Okay, just over here. I'm going to click on automation. And I'm going to change note velocity to pitch bend, right? Pitch bend is there. Okay, and you can see this is what the computer has interpreted for what I pressed for that pitch bend. I can tell from looking at it that I didn't do it right straight away. So these dots, these are like the sort of the edit points that the computer is using to create that pitch bend. So I'm going to need 3 of them. So I'm going to take out, so I'm going to end up with a sort of triangle. Okay, now here's the first note, here's the second note, here's the third note. And we want it between the second and the third note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it so it's halfway up the second note. There we go. And then I'm going to drag that one so that it's directly underneath. So I've got like a triangle. Let's hear what that sounds like. We're not there yet. bit of experimenting needed. Oh, I've got that one in the wrong place. That's what's going on. Not quite sure why the first note isn't playing either. Let's fix that. Okay, so the bend is too high, I think. Nearly there now. Just got to be nice and detailed. Putting as close as I can to that second note without actually going into that second note. That's it. Fantastic. Now when we loop that, might actually make it a bit faster. Maybe too fast. It's just a question of playing around. Yeah, happy with that. Let's leave that there. So grab the top right-hand corner and drag it out. And when we combine that with our bottom layer, we should get this. Would you look at that? That's the bass part. Okay, now, before we cut some bits out, didn't we? So we're going to have to do the same thing again. But we're going to have to be careful because we're using the loop tool. We're going to have to separate bits off. So if I took out those two notes there, they would disappear here as well. And that would mean that they wouldn't be there first time around. So I'm actually going to have to trim in between the two. Okay, there we go. And now, rather than a loop, I've got a separate one. So I can get that out. This is all good sequencing technique. Copy this. Put it back in again. Loop it. Separate the last one off again. And again, paste it into here. And I should have the bass parts. Really good sequencing technique. Okay, happy with that. So last step in the bass part will be to take out the original bass part by again dragging it up to there. And let's listen to it in context, why don't we? See what this sounds like. Let's go from here.
When I was young, I fell in love. It used to old hands, man, that was enough. Then we grew up, started to touch. Used to kiss underneath the light on the back of the bus. Oh no, your daddy didn't like me much, and he didn't believe me when I say you were the one. Oh, every day, she found a way out of the window to sneak out late. She used to meet me on the east side of the city where the sun don't set. And every day you know that we ride through the...
Really happy with that. That's really sounding quite nice. So what do we need to do at this point? We need to write it up. So let's get our top layer in view, because then we can talk about our pitch bends. Screenshot 12. This is me recording the upper layer of the bass track, again using the MIDI keyboard. I used similar techniques for this, but there is a pitch bend between the second and third notes. To do this, I used the pitch bender on the keyboard, and then I used the editor's automation feature to edit the bend until I was happy with it. This involved a fair amount of trial and error. Once I had a bend I was happy with, I used the loop tool, but I had to be careful because not all of the tracks are identical. So I made various trims in the loop and also used copy and paste to make sure I had an accurate version. Okay, so you might say, oh yeah, that's all really obvious what you did there. But all the time I'm demonstrating to the person marking this work that I understand all of the different techniques. Okay, for the second part of this project, you're going to make a screencast. And if you've got lots of good information in your presentation, you can use it as the basis. So make sure that your presentation is as detailed as it can possibly be. That's it for this episode. Going to move on to our next episode. Our next episode, we're going to start looking at the guitar tracks. So I shall see you then.